Nestled inside of the Biden administration's American Rescue Plan was a promise of debt relief for socially disadvantaged farmers, up to 120% forgiveness to BIPOC farmers who had USDA-approved loans. The USDA is now facing a class action lawsuit, and in July of 2021, 7 white farmers from Minnesota and North Dakota joined in. James Dickey is a lawyer representing the Minnesotan and North Dakotan farmers. Compass hasn't been able to reach any of the plaintiffs for comment.
The Biden administration passed Secretary Vilsack in particular passed a rule that essentially allows for total debt forgiveness for historically socially disadvantaged farmers, that I believe is the phrase is in the law, and but it specifically excludes white farmers from that relief.
The USDA has broadly defined the term socially disadvantaged farmer or rancher as those who identify as one or more of the following: Black, American Indian, Alaska Native, Hispanic, Asian, and Hawaiian Pacific Islander.
From our client's perspective, that is essentially present discrimination that is intended to remedy past discrimination, and the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause doesn't allow that kind of rule.
The law that's taking precedence in this class action case was filed in Texas in April 2021 by Sid Miller, the Texas Agriculture Commissioner. The case was sponsored by America First Legal Foundation, a group co-founded by Stephen Miller, a former advisor to Donald Trump. The suit alleges that the USDA proposed program discriminates against white farmers and ranchers who would otherwise be able to receive this relief if they weren't white. Miller says he's bringing the lawsuit as a private citizen and not in his capacity as Agriculture Commissioner. Stephen Carpenter is a lawyer for Farmers Legal Action Group.
What happens, first of all, is just as an extremely quick background. The United States Department of Agriculture has a lot of resources, does loan programs, spends a lot of money to help farmers. And historically, that assistance has very much targeted white farmers. And part of that is not surprising because it's a very old department. It was founded during the Lincoln administration. So the reality is that would have been a department that really did focus its attention on white people. That continued for a very long time. And even after it was no longer legal to do that, the everyday implementation of U.S. Department of Agriculture programs was often discriminatory based on race. And we have excellent records and histories and documentation of that going back many decades and continuing to the very recent and at times and the present.
Patrice Bailey is the Assistant Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. He said that out of Minnesota's 26 million acres of farmland,
24 million of those acres are owned by white farmers. So that lies a disparity that goes between Black, Indigenous, people of color, and those with disabilities and veterans to sort of have the other piece that's left.
Assistant Commissioner Bailey said that when he was appointed in 2019, he was asked to do listening sessions throughout the state to learn about the barriers that exclude people from getting involved in agriculture.
So what came out of that listening session, all of them actually, was that many of the barriers beyond the land and finances, school loans, mental health, insurance, there was also barriers of being overlooked, not being seen. These are barriers that continue to happen in underrepresented communities because of maybe you don't have that relationship with a lender. The lender does have a lot of power to say yes or no. And we have to also understand that this is a design. This is a system that was built so that there would be profitability in one direction. So it's a complete slave mentality, but not in the same way. You're not shackled anymore, but you still ostracized in a way because you don't have the info, you don't have the equity, and you don't have the frankly the right skin color in order to to actually be in the same spaces.
In fiscal year 2021, the USDA received 1,921 applications from Minnesotan farmers and approved 1,432 of them. Out of those approved applications, 92 were for socially disadvantaged farmers, representing $13,531,635. One of those farmers, Moses Mumanyi, farms in Cambridge, Minnesota. He came to the United States from Kenya in 2004 and began farming. After a short period, he realized he needed to grow in a larger space. Not knowing how else to acquire land, he just drove around and asked landowners if he could rent from them.
Eventually, I didn't succeed in getting that, but in the process, I ended up at a farm training, kind of an incubator program in Stillwater, Minnesota. I right away enrolled and took a 2-year course. Remember, I needed to learn how to grow in a different climate. But also, very important reason why I went there was because I felt going there was my first and only hope of getting to land.
Even after completing the first 2 years of incubator training, Mumanyi said that because he was new to the country, he didn't have acceptable credit history or the farming records to apply for a loan.
It was almost like every year I was renting from somebody else.
During this time, Mumanyi worked a job at a nursing home in Hopkins at night and at the farming incubator in Stillwater during the day. In 2014, he was able to go back to the USDA to get approved for his loan. Recognizing the importance that the farming incubator had on him, he wanted to help others similarly. Last year, he and his wife started subleasing pieces of their land to friends from the community.
We thought we were going to start with 4. We did end up with 13 last year, because this last year we started. This year, we have 19. When I started, I let the USDA know I am subleasing this land because the farmers are paying me only $100 to, get that space. I give them water, I till for them, I do everything. But the USDA told me, you can only sublease for 3 years, no more than that. Is that a structural barrier? It is. Even if I got a loan from the USDA and it was subsidized, it's public assistance, that to me defeats the purpose of trying to help me if you just help me and not me as a whole, because I'm a whole if I'm a community and I feel like I belong to a community. And the community I belong to is both the community in my neighborhood here, the community in Minnesota, but also the immigrant community. I always think of it this way. If you grew up on a farm and let's say your father or your uncle or whatever, or your neighbor, they had a good relationship with the bank, and you could go in there, you could get a loan easily because they know you come from a farming family and all that. So they know you are like, they can believe you. That is not easy for those who are cut off. It's hard for them to even just walk into the bank and get that. Even me, it might be difficult still to go to the bank and say, hey, give me $400,000 so I can buy a combine, all right? I still struggle with things, finances. I got this land, but I still was using a 1950 tractor. If we have children growing here, and we know every culture identifies with what they grow and the land, what will happen to our culture? We will lose part of our identity, and our children will not have that connection. I grew up with a strong connection to land, and I'm just feeling like if there's that generation here, the justice means, apart from us working hard, we need to be also given that opportunity to be on land and live on the land like everybody else.
Lawsuits against the program were filed in Texas, Florida, Wisconsin, Tennessee, Wyoming, Illinois, and Minnesota. Federal judges, in particular the judge in the Texas case, ruled that the statute is likely unconstitutional and the program is frozen.
And so in the end, what the courts will do, and this could easily go to the United States Supreme Court if it plays out all the way, is they will ask a couple of questions. They will say, first of all, have the groups that are benefiting in this program been discriminated against in the past? And the answer to that question is absolutely and certainly yes. I mean, it's hard to find somebody who would deny that that's been the case. And then the court says, okay, so you've had discrimination against these groups in the past. This policy that you've created, in our case, the American Relief Plan Act, if it's going to target people based on their race, it needs to be very carefully constructed. And it also needs to be, as I say, the last resort. So one of the things that the courts will ask is, has the government tried to do other things that would solve this discrimination? And in this case, the answer is yes. The U.S. Department of Agriculture created a discrimination complaint process. It created an appeal system and did other things, and none of those have solved the problem. Another thing the court will ask is, okay, well, we know there's discrimination in society, but is the government program being created? Does it come from the place where the discrimination also came from? In other words, here we have a USDA program. So the question the court will ask would be, are we talking about actual USDA discrimination, or are we talking about discrimination that just occurred in the rest of society? And again, here, there's a very good defense for the program, because the documentation I just described is about discrimination by U.S. Department of Agriculture against farmers of color.
Another argument that the plaintiffs are making is that this is too much of a blanket program. It's not narrowly tailored enough.
The argument to be made for the program is that this act provides benefits only for people who have had direct interaction with the Department of Agriculture, that in fact have active loans right now from the Department of Agriculture. And so those are the people that benefit, not people that thought about going to USDA, not people that just happened to farm, not people that had loans in the past. We're talking about people that have loans now. And so that's the argument that that this program is, as the courts would say, narrowly tailored.